Under Western Eyes by Joseph Conrad. Author's Note. It must be admitted that by the mere force of circumstances, Under Western Eyes has become already a sort of historical novel dealing with the past. This reflection bears entirely upon the events of the tale, but being as a whole an attempt to render not so much the political state as the psychology of Russia itself, I venture to hope that it has not lost all its interest. I am encouraged in this flattering belief by noticing that in my articles on Russian affairs of the present day reference is made to certain sayings and opinions uttered in the pages that follow, in a manner testifying to the clearness of my vision and the correctness of my judgment. I need not say that in writing this novel I had no other object in view than to express imaginatively the general truth which underlies its action, together with my honest convictions as to the normal complexion of certain facts more or less known to the whole world. As to the actual creation, I may say that when I began to write I had a distinct conception of the first part only, with the three figures of Haldin, Razumov, and Councillor Mikulin defined exactly in my mind. It was only after I had finished writing the first part that the whole story revealed itself to me in its tragic character and in the march of its events as unavoidable and sufficiently ample in its outline to give free play to my creative instinct and to the dramatic possibilities of the subject. The course of action need not be explained. It has suggested itself more as a matter of feeling than a matter of thinking. It is the result not of a special experience but of general knowledge, fortified by earnest meditation. My greatest anxiety was in being able to strike and sustain the note of scrupulous impartiality. The obligation of absolute fairness was imposed on me historically and hereditarily by the peculiar experience of race and family, in addition to my primary conviction that truth alone is the justification of any fiction which makes the least claim to the quality of art or may hope to take its place in the culture of men and women of its time. I had never been called before to a greater effort of detachment from all passions, prejudices, and even from personal memories. Under Western Eyes on its first appearance in England was a failure with the public, perhaps because of that very detachment. I obtained my reward some 6 years later when I first heard that the book had found universal recognition in Russia and had been republished there in many editions. The various figures playing their part in the story also owe their existence to no special experience, but to the general knowledge of the condition of Russia and of the moral and emotional reactions to the Russian temperament, to the pressure of tyrannical lawlessness, which, in general human terms, could be reduced to the formula of senseless desperation provoked by senseless tyranny. What I was concerned with mainly was the aspect, the character, and the fate of the individuals as they appeared to the Western eyes of the old teacher of languages. He himself has been much criticized, but I will not at this late hour undertake to justify his existence. He was useful to me, and therefore I think that he must be useful to the reader, both in the way of comment and by the part he plays in the development of the story. In my desire to produce the effect of actuality, it seemed to me indispensable to have an eyewitness of the transactions in Geneva. I needed also a sympathetic friend of Miss Haldin, who otherwise would have been too much alone and unsupported to be perfectly credible. She would have had no one to whom she could give a glimpse of her idealistic faith, of her great heart, and of her simple emotions. Razumov is treated sympathetically. Why should he not be? He is an ordinary young man with a healthy capacity for work and sane ambitions. He has an average conscience. If he is slightly abnormal, it is only in his sensitiveness to his position. Being nobody's child, he feels rather more keenly than another would that he is a Russian, or he is nothing. He is perfectly right in looking on all Russia as his heritage. The sanguinary futility of the crimes and the sacrifices seething in that amorphous mass envelops and crushes him. But I don't think that in his distractions he is ever monstrous. Nobody is exhibited as a monster here, neither the simple-minded Tekla nor the wrong-headed Sophia Antonovna. Peter Ivanovitch and Madame de S. are fair game. They are the apes of a sinister jungle and are treated as their grimaces deserve. As to Nikita, nicknamed Nikita, he is the perfect flower of the terroristic wilderness. What troubled me most in dealing with him was not his monstrosity but his banality. He has been exhibited to the public eye for years in so-called disclosures, in newspaper articles, in secret histories, in sensational novels. The most terrifying reflection, I am speaking now for myself, is that all these people are not the product of the exceptional, but of the general, of the normality of their place and time and race. The ferocity and imbecility of an autocratic rule, rejecting all legality and, in fact, basing itself upon complete moral anarchism, provokes the no less imbecile and atrocious answer of a purely utopian revolutionism, encompassing destruction by the first means to hand, in the strange conviction that a fundamental change of hearts must follow the downfall of any given human institutions. These people are unable to see that all they can effect is merely a change of names. The oppressors and the oppressed are all Russians together, and the world is brought once more face to face with the truth of the saying that the tiger cannot change his stripes, nor the leopard his spots. Joseph Conrad, 1920. To Agnes Tobin, who brought to our door her genius for friendship from the uttermost shore of the West. I would take liberty from any hand as a hungry man would snatch a piece of bread. Miss Haldin. Part First. To begin with, I wish to disclaim the possession of those high gifts of imagination and expression which would have enabled my pen to create for the reader the personality of the man who called himself, after the Russian custom, Cyril, son of Isidore, Kirilo Sidorovich Razumov. If I have ever had these gifts in any sort of living form, they have been smothered out of existence a long time ago under a wilderness of words. Words, as is well known, are the great foes of reality. I have been for many years a teacher of languages. It is an occupation which at length becomes fatal to whatever share of imagination, observation, and insight an ordinary person may be heir to. To a teacher of languages there comes a time when the world is but a place of many words, and man appears a mere talking animal, not much more wonderful than a parrot. This being so, I could not have observed Mr. Razumov or guessed at his reality by the force of insight, much less have imagined him as he was. Even to invent the mere bald facts of his life would have been utterly beyond my powers. But I think that without this declaration, the readers of these pages will be able to detect in the story the marks of documentary evidence. And that is perfectly correct. It is based on a document. All that I have brought to it is my knowledge of the Russian language, which is sufficient for what is attempted here. The document, of course, is something in the nature of a journal, a diary, yet not exactly that in its actual form. For instance, most of it was not written up from day to day, though all the entries are dated. Some of these entries cover months of time and extend over dozens of pages. All the earlier part is a retrospect, in a narrative form relating to an event which took place about a year before. I must mention that I have lived for a long time in Geneva. A whole quarter of that town, on account of many Russians residing there, is called La Petite Russie, Little Russia. I had a rather extensive connection in Little Russia at that time, yet I confess that I have no comprehension of the Russian character. The illogicality of their attitude, the arbitrariness of their conclusions, the frequency of the exceptional should present no difficulty to a student of many grammars. But there must be something else in the way, some special human trait, one of those subtle differences that are beyond the ken of mere professors. What must remain striking to a teacher of languages is the Russians' extraordinary love of words. They gather them up, they cherish them, but they don't hoard them in their breasts. On the contrary, they are always ready to pour them out by the hour or by the night with an enthusiasm, a sweeping abundance, and with such aptness of application sometimes that, as in the case of very accomplished parrots, one can't defend oneself from the suspicion that they really understand what they say. There is a generosity in their ardour of speech which removes it as far as possible from common loquacity, and it is ever too disconnected to be classed as eloquence. But I must apologize for this digression. It would be idle to inquire why Mr. Razumov has left this record behind him. It is inconceivable that he should have wished any human eye to see it. A mysterious impulse of human nature comes into play here. Putting aside Samuel Pepys, who has forced in this way the door of immortality, innumerable people, criminals, saints, philosophers, young girls, statesmen, and simple imbeciles, have kept self-revealing records, from vanity, no doubt, but also from other more inscrutable motives. There must be a wonderful soothing power in mere words, since so many men have used them for self-communion. Being myself a quiet individual, I take it that what all men are